The Growing United States by Cynthia Clampitt. A growing nation. In the 1800s, the United States was growing. People arrived from other lands. The size of the country grew, too. Some people came to the United States to escape poverty. They needed land to build homes and start farms. Many Americans began to believe it was the nation's manifest destiny to grow. Before people could head west, the land had to be explored. Trails had to be blazed or marked. It was the mountain men who opened up the West. The mountain men. The mountain men were fur trappers, traders, and scouts. They blazed trails and created interest in this land with their stories of the West. Mountain man Jim Beckwourth was the son of an enslaved African-American woman. He headed west after being given his freedom. He found an easier way to cross the Sierra Nevada, a mountain range in California. Kit Carson was a mountain man who became a folk hero. Carson joined a group of trappers when he was a teenager. He became a scout for the United States military. In 1854, he became an American Indian agent, a person who helped American Indians solve problems. Carson became well known for his fairness to the American Indians. Jedediah Smith was part of a group that found a way to the Northwest in 1824. In 1826, Smith became one of the first Americans to enter California from the east. Smith's adventures were often dangerous. He nearly died of thirst in the desert. He was almost killed by a grizzly bear. Jim Bridger's name lives on the Bridger Range in Montana and Bridger Pass and Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming. Bridger explored from the Canadian border to New Mexico. Mountain man John Colter traveled with Lewis and Clark before becoming a fur trapper and a scout. In 1807, he became the first American to see the area American Indians called Yellowstone. Sometimes people did not believe his stories of boiling mud and geysers. The days of the mountain men were over by about 1850. Trails had been blazed to Oregon and California. Settlers were now heading west. Moving to Oregon country. In 1810, the British controlled most of the fur trade in the Pacific Northwest. The United States government became worried that the British would try to take over more land. In 1818, Britain and the United States agreed to share the large part of the Northwest known as Oregon country. This area included all of present-day Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and parts of Montana, Wyoming, and British Columbia. Many settlers went west, including Dr. Marcus Whitman and his wife. They showed the Cayuse how to build houses, plow fields, and irrigate crops. In 1842, Marcus Whitman traveled to Washington, D.C. to ask federal officials to encourage settlement in Oregon. In 1843, he traveled with a wagon train of nearly 1,000 immigrants across the country. This journey became known as the Great Migration. This Great Migration convinced many people that the Oregon Trail was safe. By the mid-1840s, 6,000 people had moved to Oregon country. Because so many people were moving to the region, the United States and Great Britain once again talked about their agreement about Oregon country. The two countries agreed on the northern border of Oregon. This agreement encouraged many more people to move west. Wagon trains were soon crossing the continent. The journey was 2,000 miles long and could take 4 to 6 months to complete. The Oregon Trail led from Missouri to Oregon country. While on the trail, people usually woke up at 4 a.m. and would travel until 4 p.m. The travelers would then stop to feed horses and cattle, eat dinner, and make repairs. Children could play once their chores were done. Mountains and rivers were hard to cross. Many people died. The promise of a new life, however, encouraged people to continue on their journey. During the 1840s, about 12,000 people used the Oregon Trail. Of all the great overland routes to the west, the Oregon Trail was used longest. Mexico in the 1800s. The 1800s were a difficult time in Mexico. In 1821, an army led by Agustín de Iturbide took control of most of Mexico. Spain could not regain control. On August 24, 1821, a treaty was signed that gave Mexico its independence from Spain. Iturbide crowned himself Emperor of Mexico in 1822. The empire did not last long, however. Antonio López de Santa Anna led the military against the emperor. In 1824, Iturbide was arrested and shot. Santa Anna declared that Mexico was now a republic. Soon, different military groups were fighting for control. Mexico's government changed every year or two. In 1833, Santa Anna was named president. Santa Anna passed laws that hurt the United States immigrants who had settled in the area of Mexico known as Texas. The Texans revolted. Santa Anna defeated the Texans at the Alamo in 1836. Santa Anna's army was later defeated by Sam Houston's troops, and Santa Anna was captured. To gain his freedom, Santa Anna promised not to try to recapture Texas. The United States annexed Texas in 1845, and the Mexican people removed Santa Anna from power. President James Polk tried to make peace. He offered $30 million to Mexico for New Mexico and California, but Mexico refused. United States troops in Texas were attacked by Mexican troops in 1846. The Mexican War began. It lasted until 1848. The treaty that ended the war gave the United States most of the American Southwest. It also gave Mexico $15 million and granted citizenship to the Mexicans living in the Southwest. The California Gold Rush. In early 1848, James Wilson Marshall picked up some yellow pebbles in a California stream. The pebbles were gold. An immigrant named John Sutter owned the land where the gold was found. Sutter asked his workers not to tell anyone about the gold, but the news leaked out anyway. The news spread slowly at first. Everyone who heard the news wanted to look for gold. When several newspapers published the story, the news of gold in California spread quickly. California had never attracted large numbers of people. Much of the state was dry. Mountains and deserts made it hard to reach. Now, everyone wanted to go there. The gold rush was on. As gold fever spread, people left their homes and jobs. Within a few months, Sutter's land was covered with tents and was being torn up by miners, picks, and shovels. The first prospectors, or people who came searching for gold, were called 49ers because they arrived in 1849. Life in the gold fields was not easy. Most miners lived in small tents. The camps were dangerous places. A few women did come to California, some even to search for gold. Life was also hard for the region's American Indians. Some joined the gold rush, but many were driven off by unfriendly prospectors. Their lands and waterways were ruined. Californios, the Hispanics who lived in California before it became part of the United States, also found their land overrun. By 1853, a total of 250,000 fortune seekers had arrived in California. Even when the gold rush was over, California continued to grow. Settlers began to replace the miners. The gold rush was over, but California was just getting started.